The old car, a reliable but weary companion, finally rattled to a stop, its engine sighing with relief. Clara turned off the ignition, and the sudden silence was profound, broken only by the rustle of leaves and the distant murmur of water. She leaned back against the headrest, a soft smile touching her lips as she surveyed her new world. Oakhaven. It wasn't a grand entrance, no bustling town square or imposing gates. Just a winding, tree-lined road that opened into a cluster of charming, slightly askew houses, each one seeming to lean into the next like old friends sharing secrets. Beyond them, a shimmering lake stretched out, reflecting the bruised violet and rose hues of the late afternoon sky. And behind her, the ancient whispering forest from which the village surely drew its name. Clara had spent the last decade in the relentless hum of the city, her days filled with the delicate work of restoring ancient texts and the equally delicate dance of navigating urban life. She loved her work, the quiet reverence for stories held within fragile pages, but the city had begun to feel like a binding, too tight around her heart. She craved space, silence, and the kind of beauty that wasn't encased in glass or framed on a gallery wall. When the opportunity arose, a remote cottage, inherited from a distant aunt she barely remembered, in a town she'd only ever seen on a faded postcard. So she had packed her life into boxes, kissed her city apartment goodbye, and driven north, chasing the promise of quiet. Her new home stood a little apart from the main cluster of houses, nestled right on the edge of the woods. It was small, painted a cheerful but faded blue, with a rambling rosebush clinging defiantly to one side of the porch. A stone path, overgrown with moss, led to a front door that looked like it had seen a century or two of welcomes. Stepping out of the car, Clara took a deep breath. The air was different here, cool and sweet with the scent of pine and damp earth. It felt like breathing for the first time in years. A robin chirped from a nearby branch, its song a clear, uncomplicated melody. This was it. Her new beginning. The cottage interior was exactly as described by the estate agent, rustic charm with potential. Dust motes danced in the shafts of sunlight that pierced the grimy windows. The floorboards creaked a welcoming symphony beneath her worn boots. There was a stone fireplace, a small kitchen with a chipped enamel sink, and a bedroom overlooking a small, wild garden. It was perfect. A blank canvas, awaiting her touch. The first few days passed in a blur of unpacking and discovery. Clara unearthed boxes of books, her most precious possessions, carefully arranging them on makeshift shelves. Her tools for book conservation, specialized glues, delicate brushes, archival papers, were meticulously laid out in what would become her small studio, a sun-filled room at the back of the house. The scent of old paper and leather began to mingle with the natural aromas of the forest, creating a comforting perfume. She spent mornings scrubbing away years of neglect, revealing the true colors of the walls and the warm grain of the wooden floors. Afternoons were for exploration. She walked the narrow, winding lanes of Oakhaven, admiring the neat vegetable patches and the occasional hand-carved sign announcing honey for sale or fresh eggs. The villagers were a quiet sort, nodding hello with shy smiles, their eyes holding a deep, unhurried wisdom. Her first real interaction beyond a polite greeting came at the Oakhaven General Store, a treasure trove of local produce, dry goods, and surprisingly, a small selection of well-loved paperback. Mrs. Gable, a woman with a cloud of silver hair and eyes that sparkled with good humor, presided over the counter. "Well, hello there, dearie," Mrs. Gable said, her voice like warm honey. "You must be Clara. We heard you arrived a few days ago. Welcome to Oakhaven." Clara felt a blush creep up her neck. "Thank you, Mrs. Gable. Everyone has been so kind." "It's not every day we get a new face," Mrs. Gable chuckled, ringing up Clara's purchases of flour, milk, and a surprisingly good artisanal jam. "Especially one who knows her way around old books, I hear." Clara smiled. "I hope to set up a small conservation studio here. Bring some of Oakhaven's stories back to life, perhaps." "Oh, there are plenty of stories in Oakhaven," Mrs. Gable replied, her gaze drifting towards the window, where the dark green of the forest met the bright blue of the lake. "Some written, many more whispered on the wind." She paused, then added, "If you ever need a hand with anything around that cottage of yours, dear, don't hesitate to ask. Old Mr. Henderson used to live there, God rest his soul, and he wasn't much for repairs. Elias is your man if it's anything to do with wood. He's got hands that can mend anything. Clara thanked her, tucking the name Elias away in her mind. She liked the sound of it, solid and ancient, like the trees. One afternoon, drawn by the dappled light filtering through the leaves, Clara ventured into the forest, directly behind her cottage. The path was barely visible, a faint track worn by deer in time. The trees here were magnificent, ancient sentinels reaching towards the sky, their branches interwoven to form a living cathedral. Sunbeams pierced the canopy, illuminating motes of dust dancing in the stillness. The air was cool and smelled of damp earth, pine needles, and something else, a faint, sweet scent, like freshly cut wood. Clara walked slowly, her steps hushed by the thick carpet of leaves. This was the quiet she had yearned for, a quiet so profound it was almost musical. The rustle of the leaves, a gentle shh, seemed to carry secrets on the breeze, the whispers under the canopy. She wandered deeper, her eyes scanning the forest floor. She found an array of wildflowers she didn't recognize, their delicate petals a vibrant splash against the greens and browns. A flash of movement caught her eye. A deer, startled, bounded away through the undergrowth, its white tail a fleeting flag. Then she heard it more clearly. The rhythmic sound of mallet on chisel. A soft, insistent tapping that resonated with the pulse of the forest. It was coming from somewhere nearby, just beyond a thicket of hazelnut bushes. Curiosity, a gentle, insistent tug, drew her forward. She pushed aside a curtain of leaves and stepped into a small clearing. Hidden from the main path, nestled among a cluster of towering oaks, stood a small, sturdy cabin, clearly a workshop. Its walls were made of rough-hewn logs, and a wide open doorway revealed a glimpse of a cluttered interior. Outside, beneath the overhang of the roof, a man sat on a low stool, utterly absorbed in his work. This must be Elias. He was carving a piece of wood, a block of what looked like oak or maple, cradled in his strong hands. His head was bent, dark hair falling across his forehead, and his brow was furrowed in concentration. He wore a simple sleeveless linen shirt that showcased the lean strength of his arms, dusted with fine sawdust. Every movement was precise, deliberate, as if the wood itself were guiding his hands. Clara stood still, hidden by the trees, unwilling to disturb the quiet artistry unfolding before her. She watched, mesmerized, as the man's hands moved with an almost tender grace, coaxing form from raw material. He wasn't just carving, he was listening to the wood, coaxing out its hidden story. The object taking shape beneath his fingers was intricate, perhaps a bird, or a flowing leaf pattern. She couldn't quite tell from this distance, but its beauty was undeniable even in its nascent form. His profile was strong, a straight nose, a firm jawline. There was a quiet intensity about him, a deep connection to his craft that was almost palpable. He seemed as much a part of the forest as the trees themselves, grounded, unhurried, profoundly at peace. A sudden snap of a twig beneath her foot made her flinch. The man paused, his hands still, his head slowly lifting. Clara froze, caught in the act of silent observation. His eyes, the color of moss after rain, met hers across the small clearing. They held a flicker of surprise, then a calm, steady assessment. There was no anger or annoyance in them, just a quiet curiosity. Clara felt a flush creep up her cheeks. "Oh, I'm so sorry," she stammered, stepping fully into view. "I didn't mean to disturb you. I was just walking, and I heard the sound, and I was curious." She gestured vaguely at the workshop. "Your work is beautiful." He looked at her for a long moment, his gaze unhurried, taking her in. Then, a slow smile, barely a shift of his lips, touched his face. It was a gentle smile, a little shy, but utterly disarming. "No disturbance," he said, his voice a low rumble like distant thunder. It was calm, steady, and had a melodic quality she found surprisingly soothing. "Just the wood and I." He gestured with his chin towards the half-finished carving. "A heron, for the general store. Mrs. Gable wants to hang it by the lake." Clara stepped a little closer, admiring the emerging shape. "It's exquisite. You have a real gift." He shrugged, a modest gesture. "It's just seeing what's already there, waiting to come out." He set down his tools, carefully wiping his hands on a rag. "You're Clara, aren't you? The new resident at Mr. Henderson's old place?" "That's me," she confirmed, a little surprised he knew. Of course, Mrs. Gable would have spread the word. "And you must be Elias." He nodded. "Elias Thorne, welcome to Oak Haven." He offered her a hand, strong and calloused, but surprisingly gentle. His grip was firm. "Thank you," she replied, her fingers lingering for a moment in his. "It's even more wonderful than I imagined." He looked around the forest, his gaze soft. "It has its own kind of magic, this place." He looked back at her, a hint of something unreadable in his eyes. "You're a book restorer here?" "That's right, book conservator," she corrected softly. "I try to give old books a new lease on life." "Saving stories," he mused, a thoughtful expression on his face. "I like that, like giving old wood a new purpose." The connection was immediate, unspoken, a shared understanding of the beauty of preservation, of finding value in the old. She felt a warmth spread through her chest. "Exactly," she said, her voice a little softer than she intended. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the only sounds the whispering leaves and a distant bird call. Clara felt no need to fill the quiet, a stark contrast to her old life where silence was often perceived as awkward. With Elias, it felt natural, a space for thoughts to breathe. "Well," she finally said, feeling a gentle push of politeness to leave him to his work. "I should let you get back to your heron. It was lovely to meet you, Elias." He gave her another small, gentle smile. "You too, Clara. Enjoy the quiet." She nodded, turning to retrace her steps, a newfound lightness in her stride. The forest suddenly felt less like a place to explore and more like a home, holding within its depths not just ancient trees, but intriguing possibilities. Back at the cottage, the quiet felt different now. Less empty, more expectant. She found herself humming as she made a simple dinner, her mind replaying the image of Elias, his focused concentration, the gentle strength of his hands. The next morning, the gentle hum of contentment was interrupted by a small domestic annoyance. The back door, which led out to the wild garden and the path to the woods, refused to close properly. It had been stiff since she arrived, but now it jammed completely, leaving a sliver of an opening to the cool morning air. She pushed, pulled, jiggled the handle, but it remained stubbornly ajar. It was clearly warped, or the frame had shifted over time. Clara, usually quite handy with minor repairs, tried her best. She examined the hinges, the latch, the frame, but her city-honed skills in mending fragile paper weren't quite up to the task of wrestling with old stubborn wood. She sighed, a little defeated. She didn't like asking for help, preferring to rely on her own ingenuity. But this was clearly beyond her. Then, Mrs. Gable's words echoed in her mind. "Elias is your man, if it's anything to do with wood. He's got hands that can mend anything." A warmth spread through her at the thought of him. He was quiet, yes, but kind. And his connection to wood was undeniable. It felt right, somehow, to ask him. The thought of seeing him again, of hearing his low, steady voice, was surprisingly appealing. Taking a deep breath, Clara grabbed her worn cardigan and headed out. The walk to Elias's workshop was less a discovery today, and more a deliberate journey. The forest still whispered, but now it felt like it was whispering his name. She followed the faint path, the scent of sawdust growing stronger as she neared the clearing. He was there, just as before, working on another piece. This time, it looked like a small, intricate box, its lid adorned with delicate carvings. He looked up as she approached, his eyes holding that familiar calm expression. "Clara," he said, acknowledging her with a slight nod. "Everything all right?" "Hello, Elias," she replied, feeling a touch of shyness. "Actually, no, not entirely. I'm afraid I've encountered a rather stubborn problem, and I was hoping you might be able to help." He set down his chisel, giving her his full attention. "What's the trouble?" "It's my back door," she explained, a slight frown creasing her brow. "It's warped, or something has shifted. It won't close properly, and I can't seem to fix it. Mrs. Gable said you were the person to call for anything to do with wood." A faint smile touched his lips at the mention of Mrs. Gable. "She's a good woman, Mrs. Gable." He paused, considering. A warped door, you say? Happens often with old houses, especially near the woods. Wood breathes. He looked up at her, his moss-green eyes thoughtful. I can take a look. When would be a good time? Clara felt a wave of relief wash over her. Any time that suits you. I'm usually home. How about this afternoon? He suggested. I can finish up here and then head over. Around, say, 3 o'clock? Perfect, she said, a genuine smile lighting up her face. Thank you so much, Elias. I really appreciate it. He nodded, picking up his chisel again. No problem, Clara. Glad to help. As she walked back to her cottage, the anticipation of his visit settled into a comfortable hum within her. The stubborn door no longer felt like a problem, but an opportunity. An opportunity for quiet conversation, for shared moments, for the gentle unfolding of something new, here, in the heart of Oakhaven, where the forest whispered secrets and the lake reflected the endless sky. She looked forward to the afternoon, to the steady presence of Elias Thorne in her small blue cottage. As she walked back to her cottage, the anticipation of his visit settled into a comfortable hum within her. The stubborn door no longer felt like a problem, but an opportunity. An opportunity for quiet conversation, for shared moments, for the gentle unfolding of something new here, in the heart of Oakhaven, where the forest whispered secrets and the lake reflected the endless sky. She looked forward to the afternoon, to the steady presence of Elias Thorne in her small blue cottage. Elara pushed the door open, or rather, nudged it with a practiced shoulder, eliciting a familiar groan from its ancient hinges, and stepped inside. The cottage air, usually a calm, still presence, now felt charged with a gentle electricity. She glanced around, her gaze lingering on the worn armchair by the window, the stack of books on her bedside table, the small, half-finished watercolor painting propped on an easel in the corner of her living room. It wasn't messy, not truly, but there was a lived-in quality to it, a scattering of comfort that felt intensely personal. A small frown touched her brow. Would it be too much? Too little? She smoothed her hands over her simple linen dress, a soft cornflower blue that echoed the trim of her windows. There was no need for grand preparations, she told herself. Elias was coming to fix a door, not to judge her domestic prowess. Still, a quick tidy wouldn't hurt. She gathered a few stray spools of thread from the floor near her easel, tucked a loose blanket more neatly over the back of the armchair, and plumped the cushions on the small sofa. Then, she decided, a pot of tea. A warm, comforting gesture. She rummaged in her small pantry for her favorite blend of Earl Grey, the bergamot scent a familiar comfort. As the kettle began to hum on the stove, she found herself humming along, a light, almost forgotten tune from her childhood. She set out 2 of her mismatched ceramic mugs, one a deep forest green, the other a sunny yellow, and a plate of shortbread biscuits she'd baked the day before, left over from a craving. The afternoon sun, now past its zenith, slanted through the kitchen window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. Elara leaned against the counter, watching the steam rise from the kettle, her heart a soft drum against her ribs. She thought of Elias's quiet strength, the way his hands had looked as he'd gestured, the steady kindness in his eyes. He wasn't loud or boisterous, but there was a depth to him, a sense of quiet competence that she found surprisingly attractive. She wondered what he would think of her cottage, of her, a woman who had sought out the quiet corners of the world. A soft knock, firm but not intrusive, echoed through the cottage. Elara's breath caught, a small, involuntary gasp. It was him. She smoothed her dress one last time, took a deep breath, and walked towards the door, a smile already forming on her lips. When she pulled the door open, Elias stood on her small porch, bathed in the soft afternoon light. He wore a simple plaid shirt, sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms, and work trousers, practical and well-worn. His tool belt, heavy with the promise of mended things, hung at his hip. A cap, which she hadn't seen him wear before, sat low on his brow, shading his eyes, but she could still see the gentle crinkles at their corners when he smiled. Elara, he said, his voice a warm balm. I hope I'm not late. Not at all, Elias, she replied, her smile widening. Come in, the kettle's just boiled. He stepped inside, bringing with him the faint, earthy scent of sawdust and fresh air. He paused just past the threshold, his gaze sweeping around the small, cozy living space, a silent appreciation in his eyes. He removed his cap, revealing a mop of slightly unruly dark hair, and held it in his hand. "It's a beautiful cottage, Ilara," he said, his voice soft, as if not to disturb the quiet. "Full of character." A blush warmed her cheeks. "Thank you. It feels like home." She gestured towards the troublesome door. "It's still putting up a fight, I'm afraid." Elias walked over to the door, his movements fluid and deliberate. He ran a hand over the scuffed wood, examining the frame with a practiced eye. He murmured, a thoughtful sound. "Looks like the hinges are seized, and the frame might be slightly warped from years of settling. Nothing a bit of elbow grease and some careful persuasion can't fix." He set down his toolbox with a soft thud, the metallic clink of tools a surprising but not unwelcome sound in her peaceful home. "Mind if I get started?" he asked, glancing back at her. "Please," she said. "Make yourself at home. I'll just pour the tea." As she moved back to the kitchen, she could hear the gentle creak of the door as he tested it, the soft clatter of tools as he selected what he needed. She poured the steaming tea into the mugs, adding a splash of milk to hers, remembering that he'd taken his black. She arranged the shortbread on a small plate and carried them into the living room, setting them on the small oak coffee table. Elias was already at work, his back to her, meticulously loosening screws from the top hinge. The muscles in his back flexed beneath his shirt as he worked, a quiet display of strength. The air was now infused with the faint, pleasant scent of old wood and metal. "Tea's ready whenever you need a break," she offered softly. He turned, a faint smudge of grease on his cheek, and offered her a warm smile. "Perfect timing, Ilara. My hands are already protesting." He carefully set down his screwdriver and moved towards the sofa, his gaze catching hers. "You didn't have to go to all this trouble." "It's no trouble at all," she insisted, sitting opposite him in the armchair. "A cup of tea makes everything better, doesn't it?" He chuckled softly, settling into the cushions. "It certainly does, especially when it comes with homemade shortbread." He picked up a biscuit, admiring its golden brown edges. "Did you bake these?" "I did," she admitted a little shyly. A momentary burst of domesticity. He took a bite, his eyes closing in appreciative enjoyment. "Delicious! You're full of surprises, Ilara." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, sipping their tea. The afternoon light softened further, casting long shadows across the room. Ilara found herself studying him, the way his dark hair fell across his forehead, the steady gaze of his eyes as he looked out the window. "So what brought you to Oakhaven, Ilara?" he asked, breaking the silence. "It's not exactly a bustling metropolis." She smiled, a wistful quality to it. "That's precisely its charm. I needed a change, a quieter pace. I'd spent too long in the city, feeling like a small cog in a very big, very loud machine. I wanted to be closer to nature, to hear the wind in the trees instead of traffic. And when I saw this cottage, with its blue trim and its view of the lake, it felt like it was waiting for me." "It suits you," he said, his gaze warm. "The quiet, the connection to the lake." "And you, Elias?" she asked, turning the question back to him. "Have you always lived in Oakhaven?" He nodded, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Born and raised. My family has been here for generations. My grandfather was the village carpenter, and his father before him. It's in the blood, I suppose. There's a satisfaction in working with your hands, in mending things, in building things that last." "I can see that," she said genuinely. "It's a rare skill these days to truly craft something. Everything feels so disposable." "Exactly," he agreed, leaning forward slightly, his eyes alight with a shared understanding. "There's a kind of integrity in a well-made joint, a perfectly planed piece of wood. It's about more than just function. It's about respect for the material, for the purpose, for the person who will use it." Ilara felt a gentle warmth bloom in her chest. It wasn't just the tea. It was the ease of their conversation, the unexpected depth of common ground they were finding. She had always valued quality, beauty in simplicity, things that held a story. "What do you do, Ilara, when you're not baking shortbread and battling stubborn doors?" he asked, his tone light but curious. She gestured vaguely towards the easel in the corner. "I paint. Mostly landscapes, the lake, the forest. Sometimes the villagers, if they're willing to sit still long enough." A small laugh escaped her. "It's not grand art, but it brings me joy. capturing a moment, a feeling. "I saw that," he said, his eyes following her gaze to the easel. "It's beautiful. The colors, they feel alive. You capture the light here so well." He paused, looking directly at her. "There's a quiet strength in your art, Alara, just like there is in you." Her cheeks flushed again. A deeper shade this time. His observation felt so perceptive, so gentle, yet it touched something deep within her. "Thank you, Elias. That means a lot." They finished their tea, the silence between them no longer merely comfortable, but rich with unspoken understanding. When the mugs were empty, Elias rose, a renewed sense of purpose in his movements. "Right," he said, a playful glint in his eyes. "Back to this defiant door. It won't know what hit it." He returned to his task and Alara watched him, captivated. He worked with a quiet intensity, his brow furrowed in concentration. He systematically dismantled the old hinges, his tools making soft, rhythmic sounds. The scrape of metal on wood, the gentle tap of a hammer, the whir of a drill. He explained things as he went, pointing out the signs of wear, the subtle warping of the frame, the rust that had eaten away at the old screws. "You see here," he said, gesturing with a callous finger to a barely perceptible gap in the doorframe. "This is where the house has shifted over the decades. It's a living thing, an old cottage like this, and the door, it's just trying to find its place." Alara leaned closer, fascinated by his knowledge, by the way he spoke of the house, as if it had a personality. "So, it's not just stubborn, it's misunderstood?" she teased. He grinned, a flash of white teeth against the smudge on his cheek. "Precisely. Needs a little understanding, a little coaxing." He spent a good hour meticulously cleaning the old hinge recesses, sanding down rough patches, and even reinforcing a small section of the door frame with a new piece of wood he expertly cut and shaped from a plank he pulled from his toolbox. The air filled with the clean, sweet scent of freshly cut pine, a stark contrast to the musty smell of the old wood. "These old hinges are beyond repair, I'm afraid," he announced eventually, holding up a rusty, twisted piece of metal. "But I have some new ones in the truck, sturdy ones, made of solid brass." As he went out to retrieve the new hinges, Alara found herself smiling. Elias Thorne wasn't just a carpenter. He was a craftsman, an artist in his own right, dedicated to making things right, making them last. And in the process, he was bringing a new kind of warmth, a new kind of steady presence, into her quiet life. He returned with the gleaming brass hinges catching the light as he carried them. He fitted them with precision, his movements economical and strong. Alara found herself leaning against the doorframe, watching him, a comfortable silence settling between them once more. It was a silence filled with the gentle sounds of his work and the unspoken awareness of each other. Then came the moment of truth. He rehung the door, aligning it carefully, securing the final screws. He stood back, wiped his hands on his trousers, and took a deep breath. "All right, Alara," he said, turning to her, a hopeful glint in his eyes. The moment of reckoning. He grasped the doorknob and pulled. The door swung open smoothly, silently, without a single groan or creak. He pushed it back, and it closed with a soft, satisfying click. He opened and closed it a few more times, a small smile of triumph growing on his face. Alara gasped, her eyes wide with surprise and delight. "Elias, it's perfect, like magic." He chuckled, a rich, warm sound. "No magic, just good old-fashioned carpentry, and a little understanding for a misunderstood door." He looked at her, his smile softening. "No more shoulder nudges required." She laughed, a joyous, uninhibited sound. "I can't thank you enough. It's been a source of quiet frustration for weeks." He leaned against the newly mended doorframe, his gaze lingering on her. "My pleasure, Alara. Truly, it was a nice change of pace." The afternoon light was beginning to fade, painting the edges of the room in hues of soft orange and rose. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves outside, carrying the distant scent of pine. Alara felt a peculiar reluctance settle over her. The door was fixed. The reason for his presence was gone. "I should pack up my tools," he said, his voice a little softer now. "Of course," she replied, trying to keep her voice light, though a pang of disappointment echoed within her. "Can I help you carry anything?" "No, "I've got it," he assured her, gathering his tools with practiced efficiency. He placed his cap back on his head, the brim casting a shadow over his eyes, making it harder to read his expression. As he closed his toolbox, he paused, turning to face her fully. "Elara," he began, then hesitated, as if searching for the right words. "It was a really nice afternoon. More than just fixing a door." Her heart fluttered. "It was for me too, Elias. Much more." He offered her a small, almost shy smile. Perhaps you'd let me take you out sometime, for a proper meal, no broken doors involved." Elara's breath hitched. "A date? A real date?" The thought sent a rush of warmth through her, a joyful anticipation that far surpassed the earlier hum. "I'd like that very much, Elias," she said, her voice soft but firm. "Very much indeed." A relieved smile spread across his face, lighting up his eyes. "Good. I'll call you, or maybe I'll just accidentally run into you by the lake." He winked, a playful glint in his gaze. He picked up his toolbox, the weight of it seeming light in his hands. He walked to the now perfectly functioning door, opening it smoothly. He paused on the threshold, turning to look back at her, his silhouette framed by the deepening twilight. "Until then, Elara," he said, his voice a low, warm rumble. "Until then, Elias," she echoed, her heart soaring. He stepped out, and the door closed softly behind him, a sound of perfect closure that paradoxically felt like the beginning of something new. Elara stood in the quiet of her cottage, a gentle smile gracing her lips. The air still held the faint scent of sawdust and pine, a sweet reminder of his presence. The hum of anticipation had deepened into a melody, a joyous song echoing in her heart. The cottage, once a quiet sanctuary, now felt imbued with a new kind of promise, a hopeful whisper of future shared moments, of laughter and of a connection that felt as steady and strong as the hands that had fixed her stubborn door. She knew with a certainty that settled deep in her bones that Oakhaven had much more to offer than just quiet solitude. She knew with a certainty that settled deep in her bones that Oakhaven had much more to offer than just quiet solitude. The last sliver of afternoon sun filtered through the window, painting stripes across her worn rug as Elara stood by the newly mended door. She ran her fingers over the smooth planed wood, a faint scent of pine and linseed oil still clinging to the grain. The door now swung open with a whisper, no longer groaning in protest, no longer snagging on the floorboards. It was a small thing, a simple repair, yet it felt monumental. It wasn't just the door that had been fixed. Something within her, a quiet apprehension she hadn't even realized was there, felt lighter, more aligned. She found herself replaying his visit, the easy cadence of his voice, the focused intensity in his eyes as he worked, the gentle smile that had softened his features when she'd thanked him. He hadn't introduced himself by name, nor had she in her slight fluster. She only knew him as the kind stranger who smelled of wood and competence, the one who had inadvertently opened up more than just her door. A soft sigh escaped her lips as she moved further into the cottage, the silence no longer feeling empty but rather brimming with the echoes of possibility. She tidied the small space, arranging her books, plumping cushions, moving with a renewed energy. The thought of him, this nameless, helpful man, hummed beneath the surface of her consciousness like a pleasant, low melody. She wondered if she would see him again. Oakhaven was a small town, a place where paths were bound to cross, especially for those who contributed to its gentle rhythm. The next morning, Elara woke with a sense of purpose. The sun was already high, dappling through the leaves outside her window. She decided a proper thank you was in order. A batch of her famous lemon poppy seed muffins, perhaps still warm from the oven, would be a good start. As she mixed the batter, the aroma of citrus and vanilla filled the cottage, a comforting scent that mingled with the lingering memory of pine. Muffins cooling on a wire rack. Elara tidied herself, pulling on a soft linen dress and stepping out into the crisp Oakhaven air. The village square was a short walk from her cottage, a hub of activity with its general store, a small bakery, and a few artisanal shops. She carried the basket of muffins, a lightness in her step she hadn't felt since arriving months ago. She stopped first at Mrs. Gable's bakery, a tiny establishment that smelled perpetually of yeast and cinnamon. Mrs. Gable, A woman with kind eyes and flour-dusted hands greeted her warmly. "Morning, Elara. What brings you out so early?" "Good morning, Mrs. Gable," Elara replied, offering a warm smile. "Just bringing a thank you gift for someone and thought I'd pick up a few provisions." She glanced around, a silent question in her eyes. "Do you, by any chance, know a man who does repairs around town? He helped me with my door yesterday." Mrs. Gable paused, tapping a thoughtful finger against her chin. "Ah, you must mean Liam. Liam Archer. He's the best handyman in Oakhaven and a fine carpenter to boot. His workshop is just down past the old mill, though he's often out and about." She chuckled. "Always helping someone, that Liam." Liam. The name settled comfortably in Elara's mind, a solid, dependable sound. "Liam," she repeated softly. "Thank you, Mrs. Gable." Armed with his name and a general direction, Elara felt a blush creep up her neck. She hadn't expected to feel quite so anticipatory. It was just a thank you. A neighborly gesture. Nothing more. She left the bakery, her basket of muffins now nestled beside a loaf of Mrs. Gable's sourdough. As she rounded the corner of the square, past the ancient oak tree that gave Oakhaven its name, she nearly bumped into someone emerging from the general store. "Oh, I'm so sorry," she exclaimed, looking up. And there he was. Liam. He stood a head taller than her, a sack of what looked like flour slung over one shoulder, his strong frame filling the space. His eyes, the color of warm honey, crinkled at the corners as he smiled, a familiar, easy smile that sent a surprising flutter through Elara's chest. "No harm done," he said, his voice a low, comforting rumble. "Good morning, Elara, isn't it?" Elara's brows furrowed slightly. You know my name." He chuckled, a sound that was surprisingly melodic. "Mrs. Gable mentioned you'd moved into the old Miller cottage. She's quite the town's information hub, you see. Liam, by the way," he added, extending a hand that was strong and calloused, yet surprisingly gentle as it clasped hers. "Elara," she replied, her voice a little breathy. "It's lovely to finally know your name, Liam. I was actually just heading to your workshop, hoping to catch you. I wanted to properly thank you for fixing my door. It's perfect." She gestured to the basket. "I baked you some muffins." Liam's smile widened, revealing a charming dimple in his left cheek. "Muffins? Well, that's quite the welcome, Elara. You really didn't have to." He shifted the sack of flour to his other shoulder, adjusting his grip. "Though I certainly won't say no. Lemon poppy seed, are they?" "They are," Elara confirmed, pleased he seemed to appreciate the gesture. "My specialty." "In that case, perhaps we could share them? I was just about to head home for a mid-morning tea. My workshop is just a stone's throw from my cottage." He paused, a hesitant flicker in his eyes. "Only if you're not too busy, of course." Elara's heart did another little skip. "Not at all. I'd love to." And so, Elara found herself walking beside Liam, the basket of muffins swinging gently between them. The path led away from the bustling square, down a quieter lane, lined with ancient trees whose branches intertwined overhead, forming a verdant tunnel. The air grew cooler here, smelling of damp earth and moss. They walked in comfortable silence for a moment, the only sounds the crunch of their footsteps on the gravel and the distant murmur of the river. Liam's cottage was nestled at the end of the lane, a charming, well-kept stone house with a vibrant cottage garden bursting with late summer blooms. Beside it, a larger, sturdy wooden building, clearly his workshop, stood testament to his craft. The scent of sawdust was stronger here, mingled with the sweet fragrance of honeysuckle and roses. "Make yourself at home," Liam said, pushing open his front door. The interior was cozy and surprisingly tidy, filled with rustic furniture he'd clearly made himself, comfortable armchairs, and shelves overflowing with books. A faint scent of wood smoke hung in the air, hinting at cozy evenings by a hearth. He set the flour sack down in the kitchen, a bright, airy space with a large wooden table. "Tea? Coffee? I've got a good local blend of both." "Tea would be lovely, thank you," Elara said, setting her basket on the table. She looked around, admiring the craftsmanship. Everything here spoke of a quiet, thoughtful life, a life built with strong, capable hands. As Liam busied himself with the kettle, Elara pulled out 2 warm muffins, placing them on small plates. "They're still warm," she offered. He turned, a pleased expression on his face. Perfect. Nothing better than a warm muffin and a cup of tea. They settled at the kitchen table, the morning sun streaming through the window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. The tea was fragrant, a blend of Earl Grey and something subtly floral. The muffins were indeed perfect, light and tangy. These are incredible, Alara, Liam said, taking another bite. Seriously? Mrs. Gable might have some competition? Alara laughed, a genuine, uninhibited sound. High praise indeed, coming from Oakhaven, the land of Mrs. Gable's legendary pastries. They talked easily then, the initial shyness dissipating with each shared smile. Liam told her about his work, how he'd inherited the workshop from his grandfather, a man who had also been a beloved fixture in Oakhaven. He spoke of the satisfaction of working with wood, of transforming raw material into something beautiful and functional. There's honesty to it, he explained, gesturing with his hands, directness. You see the results of your effort right there. Alara, in turn, found herself sharing more than she intended. She spoke of her work as an illustrator, how she'd moved to Oakhaven seeking quiet inspiration after a particularly demanding period in the city. I needed space, she confessed, her gaze drifting to the window where a robin hopped across the lawn. Space to breathe, to think, to find my own rhythm again. And have you found it? Liam asked, his voice soft, perceptive. Alara considered this. I think so, she said slowly. Oakhaven, it's different. It's slower, kinder. It allows for a different kind of focus. And, she added, meeting his gaze, a shy smile playing on her lips, it seems to offer more than just quiet solitude. Liam's eyes held hers for a moment, a warmth passing between them that felt deeper than mere pleasantry. I'm glad to hear that, Alara. Oakhaven has a way of working its magic on people if they let it. They lingered over their tea, the conversation weaving from Oakhaven history to favorite books, from the challenges of creative work to the simple joys of a perfectly baked muffin. Alara felt a sense of ease she hadn't experienced in years, a feeling of being truly seen and understood. Liam was a good listener, his gaze steady and attentive, and his quiet thoughtfulness was incredibly appealing. He had a way of asking questions that invited deeper answers without ever feeling intrusive. As the morning wore on, Liam offered to show her his workshop. It was a wonderland of wooden tools, each piece carefully arranged, smelling of cedar and freshly cut timber. He showed her a half-finished rocking chair, its curves elegant and inviting, and a small, intricately carved bird, its wings poised for flight. This is beautiful, Liam, Alara said, her fingers tracing the smooth lines of the bird. You have a real talent. It's a passion, he corrected gently. A way of expressing myself, much like your illustrations, I imagine. He picked up a piece of rough-hewn oak. Every piece of wood has a story, a grain, a history. My job is to coax that story out, to give it new life. Standing there amidst the organized chaos of his workshop, Alara felt a profound sense of connection to this man, to his dedication, his quiet strength. He was deeply rooted in this place, a part of its fabric, much like the ancient trees he worked with. When it was time to leave, Alara felt a pang of reluctance. Thank you for the tea, Liam, she said genuinely, and for sharing your work with me. My pleasure, Alara, he replied, walking her back to the lane. He paused at the edge of his garden. And thank you for the muffins. They made my morning. He hesitated, then added, perhaps, if you're not too busy this week, I could show you some of Oakhaven's hidden trails. There's a particularly beautiful one that leads to a waterfall perfect for sketching. Alara's smile widened, a joyful light in her eyes. I'd like that very much, Liam, very much indeed. They arranged to meet on Saturday morning, a soft promise hanging in the air. As Alara walked back towards her cottage, the scent of wood and honeysuckle still clinging to her clothes, she felt a lightness in her step that had nothing to do with the empty muffin basket. Oakhaven was indeed working its magic, and it felt wonderfully, undeniably good. The quiet solitude she had sought was still there, but now it felt less like a retreat and more like a warm, welcoming space, ready to be shared. The days leading up to Saturday stretched, with a gentle anticipation. Alara found herself humming as she worked on her illustrations, the lines on her page flowing with a newfound ease. She spent more time exploring the paths around her cottage, imagining the waterfall Liam had spoken of, picturing the vibrant greens and blues she might capture in her sketchbook. She even found herself tidying her cottage with a little more care, wondering if perhaps one day, Liam might find himself inside again, not just as a handyman but as a friend. When Saturday morning dawned, it was clear and bright, a perfect Oakhaven day. Elara, dressed in comfortable walking clothes, slung her small backpack with her sketchbook and water bottle over her shoulder, and set off towards the meeting point Liam had described, the old stone bridge just outside the village. Liam was already there, leaning against the ancient stonework, his gaze sweeping over the sparkling river below. He wore sturdy hiking boots and a comfortable plaid shirt, looking perfectly at home in the natural surroundings. His smile, when he saw her, was immediate and warm. "Good morning, Elara," he greeted, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Ready for an adventure?" "As I'll ever be," she replied, a genuine smile blooming on her face. "It's a beautiful day for it." They set off, the path winding through a dense forest, dappled sunlight filtering through the canopy. Liam was a wonderful guide, pointing out different trees, identifying bird songs, and sharing snippets of Oakhaven's history and folklore. He knew the names of wildflowers, the best places to spot deer, and the legends whispered about the ancient standing stones hidden deeper in the woods. Elara listened intently, captivated by his knowledge and the quiet passion in his voice. "This path," Liam explained, stopping to point out a particularly gnarled oak, "used to be a smuggler's route, back in the day, or so the stories go. They'd bring in goods from the coast, through these woods, and down to the river for transport." Elara imagined clandestine figures, the rustle of leaves, in the dead of night. "It gives this place a whole new layer of mystery," she mused, sketching a quick impression of the oak in her book. They walked for what felt like hours, the conversation flowing easily between them. Elara found herself opening up even more, sharing details about her past life in this city, the pressures of her job, the feeling of burnout that had eventually led her to Oakhaven. She spoke of her dreams for her art, of finding a way to blend her illustrative work with more personal, expressive pieces. Liam listened with unwavering attention, offering thoughtful comments and gentle encouragement. He spoke of his own quiet life, the rhythm of his days governed by the seasons and the needs of his craft. He confessed to a love for old maps and forgotten stories, a curiosity about the hidden corners of the world, even as he was so deeply rooted in his own. "Sometimes," he admitted, pausing by a babbling brook, "I wonder if I'm missing something, staying in one place. But then I look around. At all this," he gestured to the ancient trees, the clear water, the sunlight filtering through leaves, "and I realize there's a whole universe right here, if you just take the time to see it." Elara felt a deep resonance with his words. "I know what you mean," she said softly. "The city, it's a constant rush, a race to keep up. Here, you're encouraged to slow down, to notice. It's a different kind of richness." Eventually the sound of rushing water grew louder, and the path opened into a clearing. Before them, a waterfall cascaded down a moss-covered rock face, plunging into a crystal-clear pool below. The air was cool and misted, carrying the earthy scent of wet stone and green foliage. "Oh, Liam," Elara breathed, awestruck. "It's magnificent." She pulled out her sketchbook, her fingers itching to capture the beauty before her. Liam found a comfortable spot on a sun-warmed rock, watching her work with a quiet contentment. Elara lost herself in the lines and shadows, the play of light on water, the vibrant greens of the surrounding ferns. She felt a surge of creative energy, a pure, unadulterated joy that had been elusive for far too long. After a while, she looked up, feeling refreshed and inspired. "Thank you for bringing me here," she said, her voice filled with genuine gratitude. "It's truly special." Liam smiled, his eyes warm. "I thought you'd like it. Oakhaven has many such places waiting to be discovered." He then reached into his own backpack, pulling out a small thermos and 2 mugs. "And what better way to appreciate a waterfall than with a cup of hot chocolate?" Elara laughed, delighted. "You thought of everything." They sat by the waterfall, sipping rich, warm hot chocolate, the quiet beauty of their surroundings enveloping them. The conversation softened, becoming more intimate, punctuated by comfortable silences. Elara found herself telling him about her grandmother, who had first sparked her love for art, and Liam shared memories of his grandfather, whose hands had taught him the silent language of wood. They found common ground in the quiet wisdom of their elders, the legacies they carried. As the sun began its slow descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and rose, they packed up and began the walk back. The return journey felt different, imbued with a shared sense of contentment. Elara felt a deeper connection to Liam, a quiet understanding that had blossomed in the heart of the Oakhaven woods. Back at the edge of the village near her cottage they paused. The streetlights were just beginning to flicker on, casting a soft glow. "Thank you again, Liam," Elara said, turning to face him. "This was truly wonderful, exactly what I needed." "It was my pleasure, Elara," he replied, his gaze soft. "I enjoyed our day immensely." He hesitated, then reached out, his hand gently brushing a stray lock of hair from her cheek. The touch was light, fleeting, yet it sent a warmth spreading through her. "You have a way of seeing the beauty in things, Elara. It's refreshing." Elara felt a blush creep up her neck, but she didn't look away. His touch, his words, had stirred something deep within her, a longing she hadn't dared to acknowledge. "Perhaps," she ventured, her voice a little shy, "we could do it again sometime? Explore another hidden corner of Oakhaven?" Liam's smile was immediate, genuine. "I'd like that very much, Elara. There's a beautiful old lighthouse on the coast, not too far from here. We could pack a picnic." "A picnic sounds perfect," she agreed, her heart soaring. As Liam turned to walk back towards his own cottage, Elara watched him go, a warmth spreading through her chest. The quiet solitude of Oakhaven was still a comfort, but now it was interwoven with the promise of shared laughter, of whispered stories, of new discoveries made in the company of a kind and gentle soul. Her cottage, once a quiet sanctuary, now felt imbued with a new kind of promise, a hopeful whisper of future shared moments, of laughter, and of a connection that felt as steady and strong as the hands that had fixed her stubborn door. She knew, with a certainty that settled deep in her bones, that Oakhaven had much more to offer than just quiet solitude. It offered a chance at a true, heartwarming beginning. And she was more than ready to embrace it. Clara didn't have to wait long for that promise to begin unfolding. The very next day, a gentle knock sounded at her door just as the morning sun dappled through the oak leaves outside her window. It was Daniel, holding a small, rustic bouquet of wildflowers, daisies, buttercups, and a sprig of lavender. "Good morning, Clara," he said, his smile as warm as the sunshine. "I was on my way back from the market and saw these. Thought they might brighten your kitchen." Her heart did a little flutter step. "They're beautiful, Daniel. Thank you." She took them, inhaling their fresh, earthy scent. "Would you like to come in for a cup of tea?" "I'd like that very much," he replied, stepping inside. That morning, tea became the first of many shared moments. They talked for hours, comfortable silences interweaving with easy laughter. Clara learned about Daniel's family history in Oakhaven, his quiet passion for woodworking that went beyond fixing things. He crafted exquisite, intricate pieces for local shops, each imbued with a piece of his steady soul. He, in turn, listened intently as Clara spoke of her life in the city, the demanding job that had stifled her creativity, and the burgeoning desire to paint again, to capture the serene beauty of Oakhaven on canvas. Their dates were simple and sweet, perfectly suited to the gentle rhythm of the village. Daniel took her on long walks through the whispering woods, pointing out rare bird nests and ancient trees, sharing local folklore. He taught her the names of the wildflowers she'd admired, and together, they watched sunsets paint the sky in fiery hues from a hidden hill overlooking the valley. Clara found herself sketching constantly, her fingers itching to translate the vibrant greens and golds, the soft mauves and deep indigos, onto her easel. One crisp afternoon, Daniel arrived with a picnic basket and a worn blanket. "Thought we could explore the old mill pond," he suggested, his eyes twinkling. They spent hours by the shimmering water, sharing sandwiches and stories. Clara, feeling unburdened and truly seen, found herself confiding in him about her deepest fears, the lingering insecurity about her artistic talent, the fear of failing again, of not finding her true purpose. Daniel listened patiently, his gaze steady and reassuring. When she finished, he simply took her hand, his thumb gently stroking her knuckles. "Clara," he said softly, "your art isn't about success or failure. It's about you, expressing what's inside. And from what I've seen in your sketches, what's inside is truly beautiful. Don't let fear steal that from you." His words were a balm to her soul, a gentle encouragement that resonated more deeply than any praise she'd ever received. It wasn't just his kindness, it was the quiet conviction in his voice, the way he looked at her as if he already saw the masterpieces she was yet to create. As weeks turned into months, their bond deepened, weaving itself into the fabric of Oakhaven. Clara discovered the joy of baking, often leaving warm apple tarts on Daniel's doorstep, which he reciprocated with freshly carved wooden birds for her mantelpiece. They went to village fete, shared mugs of steaming cider on cool evenings, and helped each other with small projects around their homes. Daniel building a sturdy trellis for her climbing roses, Clara helping him organize his overflowing workshop. Clara had never felt so utterly at home, not just in her cottage, but within herself. Oakhaven, with its quiet charm and welcoming community, had given her space to breathe, to heal, and to rediscover the woman she was meant to be. Daniel, however, had given her the courage to truly embrace it. With him, she felt seen, cherished, and understood in a way she never had before. Her easel, once gathering dust, was now a constant hub of activity, filled with vibrant landscapes and portraits of Oakhaven's charming inhabitants, including a particularly striking one of Daniel, caught in a moment of thoughtful concentration, his hands resting on a half-finished bird sculpture. One blustery autumn evening, a fierce storm rolled through Oakhaven, rattling windows and sending branches crashing. Clara's electricity flickered and died, plunging her cottage into darkness. A surge of old anxieties threatened to overwhelm her, the isolation, the vulnerability. But then a familiar knock sounded, strong and steady, over the howl of the wind. It was Daniel, holding a lantern and a thermos of hot cocoa. "Heard the power went out," he said, stepping in, his presence immediately calming the room. "Thought you might appreciate some light and warmth." He lit candles, their gentle glow chasing away the shadows, and they sat by the crackling fireplace, sipping cocoa, listening to the storm rage outside. In the flickering light, Daniel's face was soft, his eyes reflecting the flames. "You know," Clara began, her voice quiet, "before I came here, a storm like this would have sent me into a panic. I would have felt so alone." She looked at him, her heart overflowing. "But with you here, I feel safe. I feel home." Daniel reached across and took her hand, his grip warm and reassuring. "You are home, Clara," he said, his voice a low rumble. "And you're never alone. Not anymore." In that moment, everything clicked into place. The quiet certainty that had settled deep in her bones on that first day had blossomed into a profound, undeniable love. She loved his steady hands, his gentle spirit, his unwavering kindness. She loved the way he saw her, truly saw her, and encouraged her to be her truest self. "I love you, Daniel," she whispered, the words feeling both terrifying and utterly right. A slow, tender smile spread across his face, a light entering his eyes that mirrored the candle's glow. He squeezed her hand. "I love you too, Clara, more than words can say." He leaned closer, and in the quiet intimacy of the storm-swept cottage, he kissed her. It was a kiss that held all the warmth of their shared moments, all the promise of their future, a gentle, heartfelt declaration of a love as strong and enduring as the ancient oaks surrounding Oakhaven. From that night on, their love became an open, vibrant part of their lives. They no longer just shared moments, they began to build a life together. Clara's art flourished, inspired by Daniel and the beauty of Oakhaven. She opened a small gallery in a renovated shed behind her cottage, displaying her vibrant landscapes and heartfelt portraits. Daniel, ever her greatest supporter, crafted custom frames for each piece, his woodworking an elegant complement to her brushstrokes. One particularly sunny spring morning, almost a year after Clara had first arrived in Oakhaven, Daniel walked her through the wildflower meadow behind her cottage. The air was sweet with the scent of blossoms, and bees buzzed lazily among the blooms. He stopped by an ancient oak, its branches heavy with new leaves, and turned to face her, his hands gently taking hers. "Clara," he began, his voice soft but resonant, "do you remember that first day when I fixed your door?" She smiled, her eyes crinkling. How could I forget? That's when I knew Oakhaven held something special. And I knew, he continued, looking deep into her eyes, that you were something special. I've loved watching you find your place here, watching your art bloom, watching you become the most wonderful, vibrant woman I know. My life, our little village, it all feels so much brighter with you in it. He paused, a tender emotion clouding his eyes. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, intricately carved wooden box. Inside, nestled on a bed of velvet, was a simple, elegant silver ring, adorned with a tiny, perfectly formed oak leaf. Clara, he said, his voice thick with emotion, I want to spend every sunrise, every quiet evening, every blustery storm, and every peaceful moment with you. I want to build a life with you, here in Oakhaven, in our home, surrounded by everything we love. Will you marry me? Tears welled in Clara's eyes, hot and joyful. Her heart swelled with a love so profound it took her breath away. This man, with his steady hands and gentle heart, had not only fixed her door, but had opened her life to a love she never dared dream of. Yes, she whispered, her voice choked with happiness. Oh, Daniel, yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger, its cool metal a promise against her skin. Then, he pulled her into a warm embrace, holding her close beneath the spreading branches of the ancient oak, the scent of wildflowers and fresh earth surrounding them. Their wedding was a small, intimate affair in the village church, followed by a joyous reception in Clara's garden, now bursting with color and life. Oakhaven's residents who had watched their love story unfold, celebrated with them, their laughter and well wishes filling the air. Clara, radiant in a simple white dress, knew she had found more than just a home. She had found her heart's true resting place, a sanctuary built on love, trust, and shared dreams. Years later, the cottage Clara had once sought for solitude was now a vibrant hub of creativity and love. Her gallery thrived, her paintings capturing the soul of Oakhaven, each stroke imbued with the warmth of her own happiness. Daniel's workshop hummed with activity, his skilled hands crafting beautiful pieces for their shared home and for commissions, always finding time to carve something special for Clara. Their evenings were often spent by the fireplace, Daniel reading aloud from an old book, Clara sketching, or simply sitting in comfortable silence, their hands intertwined. The quiet solitude she had once craved had transformed into a shared tranquility, a deeper, richer peace, found in the company of the one she loved most. Oakhaven had indeed offered more than quiet solitude. It had offered a chance at a true, heartwarming beginning, a love story as timeless and enduring as the ancient oaks themselves. And Clara, nestled beside Daniel, her heart full, knew that this quiet, gentle life, built hand in hand with her beloved, was the most beautiful masterpiece of all. She closed her eyes, a soft smile gracing her lips, ready for dreams as sweet and peaceful as the love that filled her home.